Hi guys, it's Thursday, you're watching The Rough Cuts, it's Halloween week, and today I'm going to review the granddaddy of all horror movies, the original Dracula, starring Bela Lugosi. So the original Dracula was produced by Universal Pictures in 1931, and it was the first in a long string of brilliant classic horror movies that came out all through the 30s. Carl Laemmle Jr. produced it. He was 23 at the time, which is crazy to think of. So what Laemmle Jr.'s idea was for the original Dracula was to make it this huge, lavish, extravagant picture, kind of like the Avatar of its day, but that idea just got completely destroyed by the stock market crash, which forced Laemmle Jr. to operate on a much smaller budget. In order to produce that kind of film, he turned to a play that had been storming Broadway. It had been originally staged in the UK, had done really well, been transferred to Broadway, and a Hungarian actor by the name of Bela Lugosi was in the lead role. So he optioned the novel, Laemmle Jr. optioned the novel, and he optioned the play, and that's how he got his movie set up. In the book, Dracula's a lot more grotesque and not the sort of guy you could imagine being all suave and sophisticated and just like trotting down the street in London and going to soirees and all that kind of thing. So that was kind of added into the play and also into the film to make it more believable that Dracula can kind of interact with kind of London socialites. Anything that's closer to the book no longer seems like the real Dracula thanks to Lugosi's performance. So this is 1931, it's the advent of talkie pictures, and Dracula was in fact the first horror talkie picture, which partly explains why it was such a huge box office smash. But it was directed by a guy called Todd Browning, who obviously, like any other director at that time, had made his name with silent pictures. And it's kind of obvious at times in this film that he's not so comfortable with the talkie aspect of it. The talkie scenes kind of drag a little bit.
He was afraid we might follow. Follow? Sometimes they take the form of wolves, but generally of bats.
Oh, what are you talking about?
Like the pacing's a little bit slow, but when it gets to the silent parts of the film, it's ridiculously good. There are lots of shots of just like slow track-ins on Dracula's face. He doesn't even have to move his face, and it just puts a shiver down your spine. There's no soundtrack, which I noticed, and I thought that was kind of weird. And so I looked that up, and apparently it's just like a problem people had in the early days of making talkie pictures, of being able to kind of put the talkie track and also put an orchestral track on top, which kind of sounds weird, but I mean, for that to be a problem, but I mean, I guess it was a problem for those guys. So there's no music at all in this film. Basically, I just think when there's music, it takes you out of the film sometimes, right, and just makes it less realistic. So when you've got shots of just the sparse crypt underneath Dracula's castle, and there's these coffins, and you can just see them moving slightly, and the hands coming out, and rats scuttling around, and then Dracula just silently emerging from the coffin, and his two brides just coming out of their coffins, and because it's so silent, and it just feels a lot more realistic, and for me a lot more creepy. at the same time they filmed the original Dracula, they were using the same sets, the same cameras, the same costumes to film a Spanish language version with a completely different cast. So they'd film all the English language scenes during the daytime, and then at night all the Spanish cast, like a cast and crew of vampires, they'd all come out at night, and they would take a look at the dailies, the recording that had been done on the English language version that day, and they would try and improve it and try and make it better for their Spanish language version. So I mean, apparently this was, I didn't notice, but this is something that was quite common in those days. They filmed for the English language market and the Spanish language market and the French and the German market at the same time, using all the same equipment to save money. So I just think that's really, really fascinating. I haven't seen it. I really want to see that Spanish language, but... Oh God, the door's open. God, fucking hell, I'm shitting myself out here. Okay. Fucking hell. So Dracula was what made Bela Lugosi into, along with Boris Karloff, one of the two massive titans of 30s Hollywood. But until Frankenstein was made, which was only a few months after they made Dracula, of course no one had heard of Boris Karloff, even though he'd made 80 odd films before he went on to do Frankenstein. So after they made Dracula and it was a huge success, they Universal cast Bela Lugosi in the role of Frankenstein's monster, so he would have been Frankenstein's monster and not Boris Karloff. I mean, if it hadn't been for James Whale, then I mean we'd just be talking about the one icon of horror. And wouldn't it have been crazy to see Bela Lugosi play Frankenstein's monster? I can't really imagine that. Rob, you idiot. Frankenstein was played by Bela Lugosi in Frankenstein vs. the Wolfman in 1943. You tool. You a dickhead.